Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Backlog Banter. My name is Tucker Hazel, and this is Aaron Beater, and we're here to do a little bit of a retrospective. We're going to look back to the good old days of last week when Summer Game Fest season was happening. The PlayStation State of Play, which happened first, Geoff Keighley's Summer Game Fest, right in the middle there, and then, of course, closing out the last weekend with Xbox's Summer Games Showcase. We have every game written down. We're not going to be talking about all of them. No. We're here to talk about the games that stuck out most to us, why some of these might be showcase we were a little disappointed in, and also just what the vibe was, because I was also at Summer Game Fest 2025 at Playdays, playing a couple of these games, which we'll lightly touch on, but Abram, you and I sat down, we watched all three of them, all three of our reactions in full and clipped out are available on our channel. I sent you this list, and you noted that there was exactly 100 games between the three of these showcases. What are your overall thoughts, and where do you want to start diving in a little bit deeper?
Yeah, I mean, I think what's interesting to me about talking about these showcases is that I think the discourse around them is in some ways more interesting than what was actually shown. Okay. Because I do feel like, even sort of setting my taste aside, broadly speaking, there was a lot of updates. That was a big dimension of this year. And then also a fairly sizable portion of stuff that simply you and I are just never going to play, like Mecha Break or insert shonen anime that's released like 20 years ago that gets a new chapter every week, has some kind of fighting game coming out.
Invincible.
Whatever.
Marvel. The two games that have fighting games announced. You know those two shonen anime?
I think what's broadly interesting to me is the cynicism that always comes out around these shows, and sort of the way that these shows become a flashpoint for discussing kind of what the medium-term future of gaming is. And in the case of Geoff Keighley, what he sort of takes the theme of the current moment in gaming to be.
That's definitely true.
So I'm curious about talking about all of that. Like you said, there's 100 games that got shown off. I looked through that list again. I don't know what half of these things are.
Okay, all right. Well, I mean, I might be able to help you, because I have a pretty good memory for just locking in what a game is as soon as I see it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm farting around a little bit, but the reality of it for me, and this is sort of tied to my thesis about these shows overall, is there's 100 games shown. I think I calculated somewhere in the realm of the 20 games in there that I want to play and will play. I'm not really counting stuff. I'm like, oh, that's cute, and I might play it. Like, there are 20 games in here that, like, that release date comes around. Yeah. I'm gonna bring my chickens and hens, and I'm gonna barter for a copy at the store. But of those, I think it was somewhere like 8 or 9 that were actually new reveals. And everything else was updates, release date trailers, games that we hadn't heard about in a while, things like that. But I think that's great. Like, that's a lot of games. Yeah. I mean, if you're thinking about 20 games, obviously some are indies, some are big AAA things, but I've probably got $600 or $700 worth of games there that I'm going to play, right?
That's fascinating, yeah.
So my overarching thesis, and we'll get more into it, is that I just think that it's so weird to get cynical about this stuff in a conceptual sense. There's some things in particular that Geoff Keighley said that I think were wrong and I didn't really like and am cynical about. But the idea of getting upset about these showcases is like, they're designed for the broadest audience possible, and each showcase is just simply hoping that you find a couple games you're interested in, and if you and every other in the 300,000 or 400,000 people that are watching live across these shows do the same, then the job is done, really. So I do think the last thing I'll say is that it is partially why I like a Nintendo Direct a lot more than a show like this, because I think that the Nintendo Directs know their audience a lot better. Nintendo is much more carefully curating the show. That feels like there's a specific taste, or maybe two tastes. You know, you got your freaks who like the farming games, the JRPGs, and you have the Scrimblow fans, right? You get there's a clear audience in those shows. Sure. There's no audience to SGF. It's whoever.
No, absolutely.
Whatever check clears or whatever game is available. And obviously these showcases are fighting for games in and amongst them because there's multiple high-profile shows happening. So I don't know. I think I feel about the same about this SGF. Broadly speaking, it encompassing the other shows as I do about most of them.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that, because I do ultimately think that between these three shows, this 2025 Summer Game Fest season has a very different tenor from the other ones because the prevailing sentiment across all three of these, which is whether or not you prefer it or not, I think on an objective level, rather true, the biggest games were missing. There weren't any. There weren't any new first-party announcements at the PlayStation show. Marvel ToeCon is its own thing, and we'll talk about that. There were really only maybe two, if you're stretching, like major new game reveals at SGF. Most of Xbox's show was actually missing the updates to the big games that we saw last year. Almost none of the games that we saw last year actually end up getting trailers this year. And so, and then there were big games that were rumored, like this God of War game, or that the BioShock game was going to show up. We didn't see Marvel 1943 it's supposed to come out in like the next 6 months. Like there is so much stuff that on the highest level was just completely missing. And I don't know why that ended up happening. I think it gave some space to games like 007 First Light to maybe feel a little bit bigger in the cultural consciousness and the conversation than if BioShock and God of War and these things had been revealed here. But I am personally, even though I do think that on an objective level that makes this maybe a little bit lesser or a little bit quieter of a Summer Game Fest season, I do think that for my taste, this was the season where very explicitly all three showcases were incredibly focused on new teams, new ideas. I think this is probably on a percentage basis the highest amount of new team, new IP announcements we've gotten from out of 100 games. It was almost half of them, or if not more, which is amazing.
I would say more, just looking back over the list here.
Yeah, and it's just tons of new ideas. And for me, that's what I come to the games industry for. And watching these things be revealed, and consistently, I was watching all of these with you and Bo and Dan, and we're consistently outside of a couple of the biggest things like Onimusha or Resident Evil, we were consistently no, the new trailers for this weird stuff, that's the stuff that was most instantly visually engaging. They were doing something interesting, whether that's art style or gameplay or concept. And so I had a lot to pull from here, and I don't know if I will end up playing these games. It's very much my first gut reaction to this, but the amount of new things here I thought was pretty staggering and really a healthy sign for a games industry that's in an odd place, that there are so many teams that we've never heard of before, that haven't put out games before, that are trying totally distinct things.
Yeah, I think this is really the best takeaway from the whole season of showcases here. There was a big emphasis in the Summer Game Fest kind of opening monologue, which Geoff Keighley always has some thesis.
He's got something to say.
and the thesis this time was about team size and about small teams, and I think that really sucks because I don't think that that's really honest in a lot of cases. And this is also dovetailing into the Expedition 33 discourse that won't die about, was the game made by 30 people? No, it was made by 400 people, but that's still literally a tenth of the amount of people that made Final Fantasy VII Rebirth or something. The point is, I think that Geoff will often find a really rosy or convenient way to aggregate what's hot and new in the industry. I mean, this was same
and
thing
right now Expedition 33 is new and hot, and so we're going to take the talking points from that game and apply them to all the other games, even if it's not entirely relevant.
Or I think probably maybe one of the funniest phrases we've gotten out of a show in a long time, the solo developer who made a game with 9 of his friends.
Yeah, it's so funny.
Which
is
funny. And it annoys me because it feels dishonest when I think that there is a real positive through line to SGF in particular, that I think is just a little bit harder to make into a buzzword.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's annoying because the sentiment is still there, and ultimately it's a good thing to indicate. The phrasing of that one specific thing, which was in reference to the game Acts of Blood, which is actually a game that we'll talk about and you and I are both very interested in, that it was a solo developer with 9 of his friends. Well, if you just said that there's this new team from Indonesia that's only 10 guys, That's great. There's no downside to that in terms of a new, fresh face coming to the industry, an interesting team trying something ambitious, coming from a country that we don't usually get games from, especially not at the biggest American showcases.
Yeah.
But then he tries to phrase it in an unnecessarily rosier way, and you're like, Well, it's still very exciting and very cool and very true, but you're like embellishing it a little bit too much.
Exactly, and like. We were having a conversation with our friend Sean in the BLB server shortly after the show, talking about this idea of new teams, this idea that small games are dominating the industry or whatever. I don't agree with that personally, but I think that the harm of these narratives, as you're saying, is like there is a really positive, cool thing here. You don't have to exaggerate it. And to give an example, right? We saw a lot of games from Epic. Epic is publishing a lot of new IP from some even first-time teams. Like, what is it? Sector 9 has a game.
Yes, they're doing End of Abyss.
Yeah, which looks pretty cool. It's like this top-down survival horror, maybe twin-stick shooter type of game. But that's not a small game. That game is funded by Fortnite. But that's cool. Yeah. And this is sort of the difference I draw, right? I think it's important that we have a team like Epic that is making more money than God on Fortnite, saying, we're going to do a couple things. One, we're going to make the terms for people publishing on EGS extremely friendly. We're going to make the engine licensing fees better. And then we're going to reinvest a lot of this massive profit we have into a series of new IP games. That's really cool. Or the other example is like Mundfish. We saw...
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And also even, this is not relevant to technically this specific Summer Game Fest, but what you're about to say, I'm just going to take your point and run with it, is that Mundfish saw massive success with Atomic Heart. They're not only expanding their team and putting out a couple of games, they announced 2, but they also announced that they're publishing the game Ill through their new publishing arm. And those publishing arms have started to pop up from a bunch of teams that had indie hit successes, like Outer Sloth from the Inner Sloth Among Us team. Yeah. Like Pocket Pair has a publishing team that they announced they're doing the next game from Abu Bakr Salim that is apparently a survival horror game that's coming this year. Like the groundswell of smaller teams seeing success and supporting even smaller teams is something that is really starting to grow in the industry. And I think that's incredibly, incredibly exciting.
Well, but here's the other thing. Atomic Heart and Mundfish is not a small team. And I think this is another key distinction important about this showcase. You know, you were saying, and I didn't even really clock it until you said it, like big publishers like Ubisoft were missing, EA, etc. AAA game, the SGF showcase was pretty much all AAA games, but it wasn't AAA games from a lot of North American publishers. Mundfish, for example, Atomic Heart is about as AAA as the game could possibly get. It had a 6-year development cycle. There's 1,500 people in the game's credits, and Mundfish
I didn't realize that.
Is funded by a number of large capital organizations, including Tencent. I mean, it doesn't get more AAA than Mundfish. But Mundfish is also a Russian team, right? Russian organization, I believe. So. What we're seeing is a reorganization of where AAA games are coming from. And I think that there's a mistake in that I would talk about them where we see, and this is something I certainly felt, like you see a game like Atomic Heart come out in 2023 when we're not having the same global perspective on AAA gaming, and we think, okay, well, this is like a Bethesda game. It is a AA version of that. No, this is just AAA gaming from another part of the globe. And I think we saw a lot of that, because there's also this Mudang game out of Korea, I believe, from Xbox, and it looked sick. Crazy. And you were talking about Axe of Blood earlier. What we're seeing is that there's a lot of money in these other countries that are now making games with massive budgets, massive dev cycles, and massive team sizes. And I think that's just it's a broader point, something to track, the way we talk about these games. Because I think it'd be inaccurate to call a lot of these AA, not all of them, like Axe of Blood, obviously a much smaller game. Yeah. It's no Atomic Heart, right? But Atomic Heart, now what we're looking at is, in effect, a new major AAA game developer and publisher.
Yes, and that I think, because you're right, to correct me on some of the terminology I was using, what is most exciting to me is that it's a a diversification, not only through nationality, but just through multiple. We have more teams that are making bigger games now. Like, and that's, I think what's so interesting about this that I think people aren't talking about enough is we've been talking about the AAA bubble popping in the industry, and that Ubisoft and EA and Sony and Microsoft and all these big teams are watching their biggest investment games, like our WB, they're watching their biggest games like fail in real time and realize, oh shit, that massive investment that we thought was super safe is actually not.
Yeah.
And what we're seeing now actually is because Warner Brothers wasn't present, because Ubisoft and EA and Sony weren't present largely at these showcases, that we're getting IO publishing games, self-publishing for the first time and publishing other people's games. We're getting Munfish and Pocket Pair and these teams that saw successes boil up and become the next EA, the next Ubisoft. Of course, that would take a while to really get to. But then also we're seeing the now experimentality and the lower budget, even if they are still larger teams, lower budget, smaller scope, original projects coming from a lot of these teams.
Yeah.
Like, the things that we wanted to happen 2 years ago are actually happening now, and people aren't really realizing it, which I think is exciting.
I agree, and I think part of it is just that it's kind of hard to conceptualize. Like it's also like against the narrative that I think a lot of people, especially in our circles, prefer, which is that indies are the future.
Yeah,
that's not true in my opinion. I don't think you can have a big entertainment multi-billion-dollar industry on the back of indie successes alone. You need a big publishing apparatus. You need a big AAA apparatus. You need the big games that get people in, and then the smaller, really exciting creative games that exist alongside them. So to me, it's very heartening to see, okay, games have always been global, but now they're becoming global in a sense beyond like US, Japan, and some select Asian and European countries. And now it's a really a fully global endeavor. And we're getting a game like Atomic Heart, which again, a massive game, massive dividends, 10 million copies of that game announced shortly prior to SGF. So I think that's just something people need to clue into more. The fact that there's just generally like this entire reorganization at all scales of how games are being made, where they're being made, and who's reinvesting their money into what other small team. So I think that's cool, personally.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and the lineup of games here, as we're saying, really reflects that. I think we start with the state of play. I think that's probably the showcase that the two of us were highest on. Definitely the smallest number of game, the shortest. But this is a showcase that had a fucking thesis, and it wasn't even like an obvious one. But the amount of reorganization in this state of play versus previous ones towards particularly Japanese games was like an entire 180. We started off with honestly, okay, wait, they're not in order on my list, so I don't remember what started it off. But
it was Luminous.
It was like, oh, you're right, Luminous Arise, yeah, and then shortly after that, Romeo is a Dead Man, and like again, these are Japanese AA teams that are headlining a state of play.
Yes, we
didn't open on Days Gone Remastered or whatever. We opened on Luminous Arise, which is I played and is very good, and is something that I think people are going to sort of flock to because of the popularity of Tetris Effect. But that's a really bizarre way, in a non-traditional way, to open the first showcase of the season.
Yeah, I mean that's I think without question the new announcement I'm most excited for.
Sure,
any of the
nice.
shows. Yeah, I mean, Tetris Effect is a top 10 game for me ever. I'm a massive fan of Mizuguchi's work.
Yeah. And you even like Meteos, which I don't even understand. I barely get that game.
I love Meteos. Luminous...
Dude, Meteos Effect is going to go crazy in a few years.
Man, if only... I mean, they did like fucking Disney Meteos. Can we get Meteos Effect? Maybe?
Who owns the Meteos IP now?
I don't think it's either of them, because I think I was watching Sakurai's like video on Meteos.
Yeah,
and he was talking about how he didn't even really know that the Disney one was happening. And also, Meteos was like re-released on Xbox Live Arcade and all kinds of places.
It was?
Yeah, I think Bandai Namco might own it. I'm not entirely sure anymore. And
hey, Bandai Namco, they're putting out all sorts of wacko shit.
Yeah, I mean, the State of Play was the best show for me for a couple of reasons. One, my taste in games skews very much Japanese. That's mostly what I play, frankly. And so when I'm just looking at this, I mean, there's very few misses in this whole showcase for me. And the other thing that I want to really hammer in on is that this, another point in Nintendo Direct's favor in this favor, we don't need to make these 2 hours long. It just doesn't have to be 2 hours long. I don't know if you disagree with this, but I think 40 minutes to an hour is the perfect length for one of these showcases.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Yeah. I mean, I happen to like both, but I agree that I prefer the around an hour. Yeah, 100%.
I thought this was presented really well. Obviously, like I said, luminous. I can't wait for and the Japanese-ness of the show is just quite interesting to me because it makes me wonder behind the scenes what's happening, right? Because it's not like in my opinion, it's not like this was an accident. They didn't accidentally fill the show with just Japanese games, with rare exception. I wonder if it's in part a response to the fact that Nintendo just trounces PlayStation in Japan and they want more of a foothold there again, or what it is. But I just was really excited to see a game like Romeo's a Dead Man. I'm a big Grasshopper fan. And it's been so long since Suda's last project. Obviously, Hotel Barcelona is coming sooner than this, but that's also a co-development thing. With Swery, it's a smaller game. This looks big. It looks really, really exciting. So yeah, I really have basically no complaints with this State of Play. I thought it was the best one they've ever done.
Yeah, no, I mean, it was certainly the one that I felt most consistent. There wasn't many times where I felt like I was dragging or something I wasn't super interested in. A lot of my most anticipated games of this season came out of this. Though, to be fair, not a lot of new announcements in this State of Play that are the ones I'm personally most excited for. I look at my list of games here that I'm organized by what I'm most excited for from the State of Play. Sword of the Sea, announced a few years ago, coming out in August. That was not only it's my most anticipated game this year now, but I played it a little bit and it's even better than I thought it would be. If you like Journey and Abzu, and you also like Tony Hawk, it's like all that together. And now that's been obvious since the first trailer, but the way they've executed on it is phenomenal. But that was announced 2 years ago. Pragmata announced 5 years ago. That was finally revealed here.
I'm willing to count that one as a new announcement. I don't know if that's not right, but I don't know.
I mean, it's literally wrong, but I sort of understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
Baby Steps, another one I'm super excited for, coming out in September. Had a good trailer. I'm very much looking forward to that. Silent Hill F, also coming out in September. That looks great. Very much looking forward to that. For me, Cairn, coming out in November. Looking forward to that. But again, this is my top 5 most anticipated games. None of those are actually new announcements. I think the other biggest ones would be Luminous Arise, Marvel Tokon Fighting Souls, which I think we should talk a little bit more about specifically.
Sure.
007, First Light, which is kind of a new announcement, but kind of not. And Romeo's Dead Man. I mean, but that's like a 10-game lineup there that I can't wait to play all of them. They're all very different. Some are new announcements. Some are old announcements. Some of them are coming soon. Some of them are 2026. Like, it was very well balanced in terms of all the ground they covered.
Yeah. Excuse me. 007 is pretty cool. This is what I'm really looking forward to, especially if it does end up being a little bit more of a linear adventure game.
I
think that'd be pretty sick. Yeah, let's talk about Tokon specifically. Just and a couple other ones I'll do a flyby on. Ragebound still looks really good. I'm still really excited about that.
Mm-hmm. That's coming in July.
Yeah, which is cool. Hiragami is a new IP from
Bandai
Namco that apparently is pretty good. I was seeing some good previews about that one coming out. And then I don't know why, but something is really moving me about Everybody's Golf Hot Shots. I'm not sure why, but I'm really looking forward to that game.
Because you can play it on Nintendo Switch.
This is true. True.
I mean, because it doesn't look any different from the other 20 of these fucking games.
It also doesn't look great, which is also why I'm like a little bit not sure why it's moving me.
Yeah.
But let's talk about Tokon, because that's like the game of that show. And I would even make an argument that it's probably the biggest game that was shown of any of these shows.
I think Resident Evil's probably will sell like twice as much, but
that's a good point. Yeah,
but those are easily those are the two biggest new announcements by a significant margin. Yeah. Well, okay, and Black Ops, but actually, it's funny. Each of the three of those showcases ended with their biggest game, which is, of course, that usually is what happens. But the biggest thing of consequence, 1, 2, 3, I think, from these three shows.
Can I just share a grievance here? If you thought that the Black Ops 7 trailer looked cool and you found that it was Call of Duty and don't want to play it anymore, you're stupid. I don't know how else to frame it.
Yeah, I agree. Because it's still a good trailer, and if it's interesting and they're applying like to Call of Duty, that just means Call of Duty might be doing something interesting.
I don't think you should be like, oh, wait, we got one more thing, and then it's the game that comes out every year. But I also get that it's also the biggest game of every year, so whatever. Yeah. And it's got Jess from Gilmore Girls in it this time. But Raven makes really good COD campaigns. The last two COD campaigns have been really, really good. Unless Modern Warfare came out after Cold War. Wait.
Yeah, of course it did.
Yeah, and also I thought that the Modern Warfare 2 campaign sucked.
Yeah.
But they didn't make that one.
Play 3.
No, the ones that Raven made, Cold War and Black Ops 6 are really good, so I'm sure this one's going to be really good too. But
if this is indeed Raven.
I think it is confirmed to be Raven.
I guess I haven't maybe looked into it.
Or maybe people are just saying it so much because it's probably true because none of those other teams can make a campaign that looks that interesting. Yeah. But Marvel Tokon, Tucker.
Yes.
It's basically Marvel versus Marvel. It's a tag fighter from Arc System Works. Obviously, Capcom's not making this one.
Yeah.
I think it looks pretty sick.
Yeah. I mean, there's basically no downside to this.
Yeah.
It is a new fighting series. It's not a new IP, but it's a new series. It's coming from maybe the most respected modern fighting game team. Of course, you've got them in the mix with NetherRealm and Capcom Street Fighter Division and Bandai Namco with Tekken. Actually, almost every fighting game pillar of the industry is actually doing very well right now and is well received, which I think is awesome. But seeing Arc System Works, who with Guilty Gear Strive and Dragon Ball FighterZ have really made a strong name for themselves, understanding what the fighting game community wants.
Yeah.
Applying that to something that has the IP recognizability like Marvel that might help this break even further out into the mainstream with the backing of PlayStation, who now owns Evo. And so there's some crazy synergy here, which you can absolutely feel.
Making a fight stick.
That's also true. I think that this is shaping up to be what Marvel Rivals was for fighting games, where it's like, oh shit, super high quality team is making a really high quality version of the game with a really distinct art style. Both Rivals and Tokon, I think, have amazing redesigns for these characters. And it'll be on the biggest stage at Evo, but I also think it'll have good accessibility options because PlayStation's pretty good at that, and I think they understand that with the Marvel IP, they want this to be something that can be easily accessible and appealing to the masses. I think we're honestly looking down the barrel of a top 5 best-selling fighting game of all time.
It has simple controls, too. They put that in the PlayStation blog post.
Oh,
I've watched this trailer like fucking half dozen times. I think this game looks awesome. I think Marvel Rivals is stupid, but that's just a me hang-up. Like, I don't want to play that. I don't care. I'm not 15 anymore. I can't be in Overwatch anymore. I can't do it. Yeah. But Guilty Gear Strive.
No, that's right. That's right. You're 24. You need to go play Monkey Ball.
Yeah, it's like if I liked it when I had a really my head wasn't screwed on right in high school.
No, you only liked, I don't know, like Pokemon and Zelda and
But see, I like to say this from before. Like I had a clarity of mind when I was like 7 that I lacked when I was 15. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah. No, yeah, because when you're 15, you started liking, I don't know, like Naughty Dog and Bungie and things like that.
I mean, a broken clock is right twice a day.
I'm just trying to pin a needle in your consistency here because it doesn't exist.
I really liked
me trying to find Amber's consistency is like the raccoon eating the fucking
the cotton. I fucking love that video.
I'm like, oh, there's nothing here.
The other raccoon video that's awesome is the guy that catches the raccoon like T-posing in his yard, and someone put the Halo 1 theme over it.
Tokon.
So I think Guilty Gear Strive is awesome. That's like the only like traditional fighting game I played outside of Street Fighter 6 and Injustice 2. But that's how I like fucked around in. Like I really tried to play Guilty Gear Strive.
Yeah.
Because that game really, I mean, to be honest with you, because the game looked awesome. I don't
Yeah.
Is it better than other fighting games? I wouldn't even know how to compare them. But because of that, I think that this game was just going to be a real heater. I mean, I was listening to Maximilian Dude talk about it, and he was like, Marvel vs. Capcom was interesting because it was East meets West, with Marvel and then Capcom.
Yeah, and Capcom. Yeah, I've heard of them.
This is also East meets West, but it's just, it's these Western Marvel characters, but now in this Japanese style, which we've never gotten. At least not in a video game. There's been comics and random shit. Probably like an $8,000 Iron Man samurai statue you could buy.
Yeah, probably. But those redesigns are also, again, as I mentioned, something that is incredibly just visually striking. I mean, clearly, ArcSys has some great eye for character design and particle effects and just clarity of visual style, and applying it to these characters and seeing them just like the Star-Lord redesign and the Iron Man redesign. Like, these are, they feel like different characters, but they still are recognizably the characters that we love.
Yeah.
And so I'm really over the moon for this. I think that it's probably the most exciting announcement from the show, because it was also totally out of left field.
Yes.
I mean, Arc System Works has put out a game at a pretty consistent clip, but they kept this locked down. Nothing about this leaked. The fight stick thing didn't leak. The fact that it's PlayStation publishing this game did not leak. And that's, can't be said about, the rumors of Black Ops 7 and Resident Evil 9. We've been talking about that for like a year and a half at this point. And so having Tokon come completely out of nowhere and blindside people, I thought was really, really remarkable. And it's probably the most memorable moment of this entire summer season.
Yeah, and because Dragon Ball FighterZ was 2018, I'm seeing here, and then 2021 for Strive, and then there's been obviously lots of support for Strive in the intervening years, but it's been a long time since a brand new Arc System Works game. And according to Maximilian Dude, like, there's rumors that like maybe they were doing a One Piece fighting game, or that they were doing DBZ Fighters 2, but they're doing this, which I think is the best outcome. So I think that looks really, really sick. I think it's the best announcement of all of these on like a surprise level and a hype level.
Yeah. Although
my favorite announcement was Luminous. So best and favorite both in this show.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
Yeah, and there was also some shit for sickos in there. I mean, Final Fantasy Tactics finally getting re-released is another one of those big dream moments that we got.
Same with the Mortal Kombat
in that
stuff.
State of Play. Yeah, and you're right. And Mortal Kombat coming back from Digital Eclipse looks awesome. I was very, very happy with this show. I got release dates for things that I was excited about. We got major announcements. It was great all around. Yes?
I was just going to say, let's talk about a show that was even better. Summer Games Fest.
You don't believe that?
No, I don't believe that. I thought this show is really, really bad.
Yeah.
Now, here's my feeling about Summer Game Fest.
Yeah.
I think that there was a couple things working against this one. The first was that Geoff Keighley just had an amazing show in the Game Awards last winter. And it was, in my view, the best show he'd ever done.
Easily.
From every perspective. And so he raised the bar very high, and then with this show he brought it back down to where it's always been.
Yeah.
And I think that these shows to me just feel inauthentic in a lot of ways. I just look at a lot of the games that are here, and I'm like,
authentic is when there's games that I want to play.
No, not really. It's like, it's just it goes back to what we were saying before about the way he talks about team size, or the way we spend these big sections on like these anime updates, or like go get the Twitch drop for fucking whatever game.
Yeah.
I felt like there were not that many things of consequence here, and I felt like the Kojima section was disappointing because they bring Kojima out just to let him show a really weird out of context scene from Death Stranding. And then I didn't really feel like there was that much space for developers otherwise. Like there was some...
Sure. Oh, that's a good point, yeah.
But it was just like trailer after trailer, and it felt a little transparent that some of this stuff is just, pays a lot to get the slot.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think you're right. It makes this Summer Game Fest especially a very interesting balance of different sides of the games industry, because when you're looking at Blade and Soul, which you actually went to the bathroom for, and it was this, I don't even really know what Blade and Soul is, but it's this thing that had like 3 announcements back to back, and you couldn't tell they were supposed to be different games. That is very much, it feels like to us as people who aren't fans and not familiar with what is, I presume, a reasonably popular series somewhere in the world for a specific audience. It feels very much like I feel like I've seen this exact kind of thing all like a lot of times before, especially at these kind of shows. This is where the money's coming from because they're paying a bunch. But the balance was that there was also just a ton of stuff that very clearly Geoff Keighley liked and sought out and put in this show. Felt that boxing, the way he like got really excited about it. True. And it's a fucking Punch-Out Muppet game. Like, that game is made by just a handful of people that have been working on it. It's like, they didn't pay him the whatever like $20,000 to get this in the show. He was just like, I saw this and super excited about it, and so he put it in the show. And so there was it was a weird mix, which I certainly agree with. But I definitely come down on the side of positivity with this one, because again, the lack of major hitters here gave the more interesting things, I think, a bigger place to shine, where they would have been overtaken by more major announcements. And the things that were major announcements comparatively felt sort of samey and generic, you know, having Mortal Shell 2 opening the show. And admittedly, I actually thought that was a pretty good trailer for Mortal Shell, which I had basically nothing about. But that and Code Vein 2 and like these games started to sort of run together, as these are objectively the big announcements of the show in terms of coming from major teams, sequels to IP. Probably those are definitely the ones that paid to get into the show. But then when we look at things like, obviously the Epic games are also, the Epic's paying to show them off there, but those games definitely felt like they stood out a little bit more because they were in a sea of things that might have felt a little bit generic or samey, and then you get Out of Words, and it's this really cool, like built in claymation 2D co-op game. It's like, that feels like a breath of fresh air. I really want to check that out.
Yeah, I don't disagree, but I think this partially just comes back to my point about runtime. Like, there's so much here definitely, that I end up forgetting about some of that. Like, I agree with you specifically about Out of Words. I thought that looked really, really cool. And that's one I certainly have on my radar to check out. But it's sort of buried in and amongst all this other stuff. What's just, it's hard for me. I don't have your lust for tracking and organizing information. So I'm like watching.
No one does, buddy. Don't worry.
Yeah, and I'm watching, and I'm like, oh, I didn't even remember that game existed. Which, you know, if the show has to be a big blowout, I get it. Again, it goes back to what I said at the beginning. These shows are here, so there's a little something for everybody. But it just doesn't work so well for me because I feel like I end up forgetting things, or we're just running through these announcements. And there's no doubt,
definitely,
again, that there's just a lot of stuff here I'm not going to play. But there certainly is.
Let's talk about them.
Yeah, I mean, the of all of the games here, the one I'm most excited about is the one we saw actually maybe the least substantial information for. But that's Mafia: The Old Country. I'm really, really excited about this game.
I forgot that was even there.
Yeah. We got like another trailer for it. Who cares? We already know when it's coming out. We blah, blah, blah. It's like a linear, like third-person action game. I'm really excited about that game. And like that's such a Geoff Keighley coded announcement.
Well, it's not an announcement.
No, but it's like the type. I should have said game. Like, that's the type of game that Geoff Keighley, lives and dies by in these showcases.
No, definitely true. That and Dying Light: The Beast.
Of course, that is an archetypal Geoff Keighley game.
There's
a couple others I want to just, obviously we'll talk about Resident Evil separately, but I'm just looking at the other stuff that's worth shouting out. I'm not going to shout out like Onimusha. We
looked fucking sick.
It looks sick. I can't wait for that. We've belabored that and we'll talk about it in other points. I am quite excited about this Lego Party game, particularly after you shared your thoughts from actually getting to go hands-on with it. We'll have another video soon with some more of your thoughts from SGF. Acts of Blood also looked good to me. I think those were the two new announcements that I was really excited about out of here.
I remember you being excited about Lego Voyagers.
Oh yeah, I'll play that as well. I thought Lego Builders Journey was pretty cool.
Yeah, and this looks even cuter. And
it
they're
does.
Instead of little faceless guys, they're just little one brick dudes. I think that's so goofy.
I'm not gonna play it, but I thought it looked pretty cool.
It looks amazing. That actually might for me be the new announcement that was the highlight of the show. Especially because I think I'd lightly heard of it, but getting a big trailer for it was just really made it stand out.
Yeah.
Amazing animation, amazing enemy design, incredible lighting. Just in this era of survival horror games, third person survival horror games, first person survival horror games being like consistently some of the best games of the year.
Yeah.
I'm excited to see a new IP alongside Chronos, which is also coming out later this year.
Also looks really good.
Ill is not coming this year. That's a no even release window on that. But I love the Resident Evil games. I love Alan Wake. The new Dead Space game is great, and now we have Silent Hill is coming back from Bloober Team.
Just announced a remake today.
That's true. That's true. And so I'm glad that other teams are being inspired to sort of join that and bring a little bit of fresh blood.
Yeah, I also think it's important because, like, I think that survival horror has a place in AAA gaming, and I think that it didn't for a long time. And even when we talked about, like, a big resurgence in horror games like a decade ago, you're talking about a lot of indie stuff, which is not a slight against it, but just to say that I think that in the AAA space, we didn't really crack the code for particularly new horror games, really.
Yeah.
Because a lot of what we were getting were, like a Dead Space remake, a Resident Evil 2 remake.
True. Yeah.
And so that's part of why I thought Alan Wake was so awesome in 2023.
Yeah.
I knew I was forgetting something big. I was like, I had a favorite announcement here and I forgot about it. It's Stranger Than Heaven.
Oh, really? Okay, let's talk about that.
I think that looks awesome. I don't really have thoughts deeper than that. I just really like this sort of smoky, noir, like really saturated, grungy look of the game. I like that when we saw it last time as Project Century, it was a different decade. Now it's in the 40s. You have to imagine, based on the name, we're going to be going across the 20th century. Yeah. Which is a pretty cool idea.
And it's just leaning into everything that RGG is good at.
Yeah.
I am of the opinion that this should be considered a new IP. I think it is probably in some way tied to the Yakuza series, but
like
I don't
Judgment,
think it really matters.
Probably.
Yeah, like Judgment is. But the idea that has been floated around that you are playing as like an immortal guy that is just living through all of these decades and seeing all of this turmoil and change and crime and stuff is just such a compelling concept.
Yeah.
And it also leans into one of the strengths of RGG, as I was saying, which is they take a map and redo it for different time periods.
Yeah.
They've been doing this across all their games in the Yakuza series, and seeing that sort of stretch to its limit of presumably seeing one or two locations in the 1910s all the way maybe up to even the modern day, like the 2010s. Like, can you imagine what that's going to really be like with the sense of like culture and evolution and time passing? Like, games don't really attempt anything like that. It looks like the gameplay looks really smooth. The animations look excellent. Fully voice acted in English. That's definitely my number one most anticipated game from this. And it's probably out early next year, if we're being honest with ourselves.
Yeah, that looks really, really sick. Are there any other ones you want to spotlight before we talk about Resident Evil?
Me and the Hollower got a release date here, coming out on Halloween. Basically no new information except for that. Like, it was just like a trailer. I'm like, yeah, okay. Me and the Hollower. That's an interesting one because they announced it such a long time ago that it feels like a known quantity, even though, like, to me, this announcement is more fucking finally rather than like I'm super hyped. I am excited for the game, but it definitely has had an unfortunate time where I've just felt like I'm ready for it, and I haven't had like the energy. Even this release day is like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna play it, but I'm not like jonesing for it because I feel like I've just been seeing it and thinking about it for so long.
I'm in exactly the same position. Nothing to add there.
Yeah, which is really unfortunate because it's not anything of the game itself. It's just the marketing plan didn't work out, and the development plan clearly didn't work out.
I mean, I demoed it like 2 years ago now, or more. It might have been 3 years ago now, and I thought it was great. But again, you know, we're thinking about 2 or 3 years later from public demos, right? So I think, we'll see. I think it'll be excellent, but I wouldn't say I'm not excited for it at the moment.
Yeah. And then finally for me, not a new announcement, but Mixtape, coming out later this year. I got to go hands-on with that. That is one of the best games I played at SGF. It's so much more ambitious and varied than Artful Escape was. It's leaning into music culture in a really fascinating way. This sort of pitch is that 80s teenage story. You go around in this house collecting cassette tapes, and when you play the cassette tape, it hard cuts to the memory of what the person was when they were listening to the song for the first time. And that's just such a compelling concept. It's really executed well. I was super impressed by it, and so I was just excited to see it here and get a reiteration that it is coming this year.
Yeah, it's an amazing idea. I really did not like the Artful Escape, so I kind of wasn't even really keeping Mixtape on my radar. But the concept is so good, and you've given it your cosign having played it now.
Yeah.
I'm definitely gonna play that when that comes out. Yeah,
and so Capcom is the last place, and I think actually let's just lump all of Capcom in with this because we didn't really talk about Pragmata. It finally came back. Capcom is gearing up for an absolutely fucking nutso 2026.
Yeah,
with Pragmata, Onimusha Way of the Sword, and Resident Evil Requiem. The only one dated is Requiem, which is coming in February. Which I don't really know what that means for those other two games.
Do we know that Pragmata is coming out next year, or is that just? Excuse me. Is that just a?
Yeah, no, it's 2026.
Okay,
yeah.
Cool.
Well, that's what they're saying. Yeah. But Capcom, I think, is the one that I come out of this whole summer season being like, obviously, I knew that they were doing it the best, but they're really doing it the best. I mean, they have 3 major games that they're showing off here, all in very different genres, all with that are just really, really impressive. At basically all of the showcases with some of the trailers and announcements that are exciting people the most. I was just really blown away by everything that they shown and did here, outside of the fact that they kind of took a big fucking Cleveland steamer in the middle of Summer Game Fest. But you know, that's just kind of a funny thing now in retrospect.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. I mean, I think that Capcom is the best publisher in the world right now, to be honest.
Yeah.
In terms of quality of release, in terms of consistency of release, in terms of making everything feel significant and interesting and worth your time. I don't think I've missed a Capcom game other than Exoprimal, but you vouch for Exoprimal. So between us, we've not missed a Capcom game in, I don't know, since RE7. So
that simply cannot be true.
A major one. I don't give a fuck. Like, you brought up like Ace Attorney. I'm not gonna play. But I'm not playing Mega Man Battle Network. I'm talking about. How about this? Things released in RE Engine in the last decade. How about that?
Yeah, I mean, I played all the modern Resident Evil games since 7. We both played Dragon's Dogma. We both played Monster Hunter. We both played Street Fighter. Devil May Cry 5. Like
Kunitsugami,
Exoprimal. Like they're in a. We've been saying this for almost a decade now, but they're in a renaissance. And this is a doubling down on it and a great continuation. Because Pragmata finally getting revealed. We know what the gameplay is. It's this really interesting third-person shooter with hacking mechanics. So the compelling thing is that it's a third-person shooter, and so you've got you can switch between your shotgun and your pistol and stuff like that. But in order to actually do damage to these robot enemies, the little girl on your shoulder, who is an android of some sort, has to hack the enemies to unlock their armor. And so while you are in real time dodging around the enemies, you have to do this mini game kind of, but it's just the gameplay. So where you use the face buttons to navigate around this grid to go through certain checkpoints and then reach a certain end goal. To me it felt like you were defusing a bomb every single time.
Cool.
You're typing in the code, you hit the fucking space bar to to like make sure that the bomb doesn't blow up. But it was like that. But then the enemy's armor unlocks and you go boom, boom, boom. And you can do a ton of damage to them. And I'm also excited to see how that evolves through just the 20 minutes I played of it. They were introducing new types of elements on the grid that you can go through and have different effects and stuff. I think especially once it gets hard, it's going to be like really satisfying to do.
Yeah.
I thought it was excellent.
Yeah, I think of the 3 Capcom games upcoming for next year, probably one is the one I'm most excited about.
Oh, really? Okay, cool.
Yeah. I think Resident Evil's boring, to be honest with you. I've played a lot of Resident Evil games. I think other than the 2 versions of Resident Evil 4, for me, they don't really move the needle. So I'm sure Requiem will be good, and I'll turn that over to you. But for me, Pragmata, the idea of like a cool RE engine sci-fi third-person shooter sounds awesome. That sounds really right up my alley.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to that the most. Onimusha also I think is really cool. I need to just play those old Onimusha games. I'm sure it'll bear some but limited resemblance to the new one, and it probably won't even matter. But I would like to. Before Way of Water comes out.
Way of Water, yeah.
But RE9.
Yeah, so I got a chance to see both Onimusha Way of the Sword and Resident Evil Requiem on a hands-off demo. So I was sitting in a little theater. I was sitting next to Danny O'Dwyer, which was fun, and we were watching these games. We'll start with Onimusha. It's even better than all those other trailers make it seem. Seeing 30 minutes of uncut gameplay was like, oh, this is... I mean, it's going to be in contention for Game of the Year next year, I think. It is everything that people like out of like Souls type games, where you've got your parry timing, cool enemy design, things like that. But it's got this sense of humor to it because the main character is like kind of a fish out of water. Like he doesn't want the gauntlet that's on him. Like he's talking to it, kind of like Frey does to the bracelet in Forspoken. But the combat looks amazing. There's like these contextual parry animations. So like if an enemy's attacking from behind you, you can still do the parry, and he'll like shooing like samurai, put his sword behind it and he'll block it. You can do this really cool thing where if you get a perfect parry, you can like then go and like kill a string of enemies. You can parry projectiles back towards enemies. Once you like stagger them, you get to choose what body part you attack. And that like does different effects on them. Like if you cut off their arm, they won't be able to use that. It has this just really dynamic and fluid animation.
Yeah,
looks stunning. I thought it was just absolutely standout, which is cool because even though I was excited about it from when they announced it in December, seeing that game in its trailer form so many times just made me be like, it burnt me out very quickly. But I was definitely reinvigorated by watching the uncut gameplay where I was like, no, there's some real sauce here.
Good. RE9.
RE9 is interesting. I actually think that so this is it's so over, or no, we're so back, it's kind of so over thing for me, where obviously within the SGF, they really killed people's mood by saying like, we're working on the next Resident Evil and you'll see it soon. And it's like, what the fuck is wrong with you guys? That's fucking evil. It was true. So that killed the mood for about 30 minutes. Then the game was shown. That I think that trailer is actually really, really good. Showing off that we've got a more dynamic and interesting protagonist in Grace Ashcroft, who's an FBI agent. The re-exploring Raccoon City after the bomb has been dropped, I believe at the end of 3, is a really cool concept. And so I loved that trailer. I thought that was a great way, and it's coming in February. Like that's like what Capcom is great at. It's just like dropping something out of nowhere. It's like, we're gonna be playing it soon. Don't worry. And then the the hands-off demo, 30 minutes of uncut gameplay. It was so stock standard for Resident Evil. You're walking around in the dark hallways. Find the fuse to put it in the box to open the door. Find the cherub key to unlock the cherub door.
Yeah.
Getting chased by a big monster. That looked really cool, but nothing in the demo was particularly interesting, which I think is unfortunate because from what we've heard about this game being a little bit more open, and obviously with Grace Ashcroft as a new character, there are things about this game that I think will help it stand apart from previous games, but within this 30-minute hands-off demo, there was nothing that made it stand apart from the previous games. Like, what the fuck are you doing? It was just really weird to get such a stock standard by the numbers Resident Evil hands-off demo. It's the first time anyone saw real gameplay of that game. I thought it was really unfortunate.
Yeah, I don't know. I just find Resident Evil kind of boring, to be honest. And
Yeah.
I think I'm curious if like a different structure would do that good. Although it's not even like Resident Evil has always kind of been non-linear. Thinking about like RE1 and things. So I'm curious how different an open world opposed to a sort of non-linear contained.
If that's even true.
Yeah.
We don't know that 100% yet.
Are people just assuming that?
Well, I mean, there's nothing like that's been the rumor about what is making it take so long and everything.
I just thought that was like a fact of life. People are just I didn't realize that this is just like something people are assuming.
Yeah, I don't know.
We'll see. I mean, there's no doubt it would be anything less than great, but
yeah,
you almost do kind of wonder, like, you know, we've got these remakes, we've got these 2 new first-person games. Are we gonna? And when was Resident Evil 7? That was 2016 or something. 17. So what's that? 8 years ago. We'll be coming up on a decade of new style Resident Evil soon. I wonder if there's a need for a new style Resident Evil.
Yeah, definitely.
We'll find out in February.
Yeah.
Tucker, let's talk about the last show we have here.
Xbox
show.
Merry Christmas, Xbox.
Mike Tyson's version of the Usher ad.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't really know about this Xbox show either. I think you're to blame because I watched your really good video about how this is gonna be a 10 out of 10 show and everything that was ever we could dream of was gonna show up.
Yeah.
But I think in all seriousness, I kind of feel like at this point, Xbox is in this awkward position where what they're trying to sell you on is a vision of like a new meta-textual way to play games. Xbox Play Everywhere, new handheld, where transfer your progression from this to that, and like that's their message and that's their narrative, and contained in that is like literally 35% of the gaming industry. By ownership and like I don't know. I think that Xbox is in sort of a weird place now where they're releasing so many games. They're so prolific. These games are quite big, but there's no like sense of cohesion or purpose to any of it in my mind beyond the fact you can now play it anywhere. And that's cool, but I just kind of like when I think back on this show, I think about the fact that like my takeaway is I can play any of those games like on my phone via cloud and then pick it back up on my Xbox. And maybe I'm just hyper focused on the wrong thing, but it just feels like a random assortment of games. And the bottom line is that these are all now playable anywhere and everywhere.
Sure. So what makes a showcase feel less random to you, do you think? Because I'm curious about that randomness.
I mean, again, I think I want like a 40-minute thing from PlayStation and Nintendo where there's like a clear grouping of these games. And it's also partially just an issue how Xbox is structured for me. It's like you think of PlayStation Studios, right? And now people want PlayStation Studios to diversify more, right? But there's a sort of a through line to a lot of PlayStation Studios games. And there's certainly a strong through line to Nintendo's games. There's no through line at all to Xbox's games. And most of them aren't even treated as though they're owned by Xbox, which I think is interesting, probably good, because I'm not crazy about the monopoly that they're forming. Like, a Bethesda thing is a Bethesda game. It's not a Microsoft game. They were very clear, like, Bethesda presents this thing.
Yeah.
I guess I'm just...
Bethesda presents Gun Fission.
Yeah. I think it's a combination of, like, me not being the target audience for this Play Anywhere vision, a lot of these announcements being low impact or updates, and then the fact that I think Xbox is, broadly speaking, in a very transitionary period. And...
Yeah, definitely true. Yeah, well, I mean, I actually think I think the transitionary period was last year. I think we're in the period now. I mean, all the games are coming everywhere. All the games are coming out, and all the games are integrated into all the studios are integrated into Game Pass and stuff. Like the transition is done.
Maybe I just don't care. Maybe it's as simple as that.
Yeah.
I mean, but here's the other thing. We're talking about these things all coming out, but like you said at the top, a lot of things didn't show up. I mean,
yes.
Yeah.
But that's it's only a problem for like that 2-hour period. Because it's not like the games aren't coming out, and most of them, it seems, are coming out next year. And it's not like they don't have maybe the most full schedule of a first-party publisher outside of Nintendo ever this year. Yeah. And they managed to, in a year when they already had like 9 things releasing, announce 3 more things that were coming out this year. And so it's like, I'm confused by this because it felt imbalanced compared to the last 2 years. There was a little bit less of continuity where we were, seeing things like State of Decay and Fable and Gears and these games from previous years not show up at all here, which is like, okay, well, most of those are actually coming out probably next year, which means that they have an amazing 2025 and they'll presumably have an even better 2026. So that's great, but like, what are you going to show off these games? Like that's the thing that was most confusing to me. It's like, especially like, what's the first half of next year look like for them? We don't really know, because even the one game that we did get update on, which was Clockwork Revolution, which I thought really actually impressed. Yeah, I thought that really trailer was really excellent. I expected that to get a Q1, Q2 Avowed South of Midnight release window. And not getting that probably... Well, last year we were saying the same things about Indie and Avowed.
You know what I think it is for me partially? And I think you're helping me hit on it here. Is like... Mm-hmm. And you're helping me hit on it here by reminding me of something you said like 6 weeks ago.
Excellent.
But like you were talking about how, and I think this is true, that a lot of Xbox Studios games are just really good. How many are like truly standout things, right? Mm-hmm. Seldom few. Yeah, even for as much as I love Halo, Halo is not a standout thing anymore.
Yeah, sure.
And so I look at a game like Clockwork Revolution, and it does look really cool, but that's like quirky, irreverent, open world, potentially open world Western RPG of some variety, number 850 from Xbox, and it feels that someone in Blue Sky was saying this, but like, when is Xbox going to end up with a reputation for making this style of game that PlayStation has for making third-person cinematic games? Because if you start clocking up Avowed, Outer Worlds 2, you add in High on Life, you add in Clockwork Revolution, you start building out this big list of like Fable, these like third-person or first-person fantasy like 2007 games. Mm-hmm. And I think it's not helped by the fact that like I thought Doom was not very good. I think that the quantity is impressive, the business model is impressive, but I don't know how many of these games are like really impressive to me. Is this stuff actually going to be amazing? Like, what percentage of these Xbox games are actually going to be outstanding? I think that the answer is probably not a huge portion of them.
Well, yeah, and that's what's interesting is that Xbox built and Microsoft built a conglomerate of teams, some of which had produced, actually most of which had produced standout industry-defining titles. Yeah, we're talking about a conglomerate that includes the teams that made Minecraft and StarCraft and Call of Duty and Skyrim and Doom and even like in Forza, like that was and Halo. Like these are some of the most industry defining, but they almost all of them when they were acquired. I'm actually just sort of coming up with this. When they were acquired, were at a low point in terms of their impact on the industry and their reputation. Even like, and a lot of the Xbox Game Studios, particular ones, were games that are studios that have been thrust into the limelight, and the expectation has become that they are matching PlayStation Studios' quality because they're from their competitor or being published and funded by their competitor. When the reality is, Compulsion Games and In Exile and these teams they were never meant to be Naughty Dog or Sucker Punch. They were brought up to that level by acquisition. But I do think that it's a dip, but I feel like we're coming out the other side where when Bethesda is acquired, the recent the arcane games around that were Wolfenstein Youngblood and then Redfall, and then Blade is probably going to be better than those games.
Yeah.
Or like having indie come out, and like Starfield was mostly worked on outside of the purview of this, but like, or like South of Midnight is better than Compulsion's previous games. So like they definitely are bumping up overall their quality. I mean, that's what we've been talking about. Is like, these are very good games. They're not industry defining games, and I think it's unfortunate that that creates a negative tenor when the reality is, if every game Xbox puts out this year is a 7 to a 9 out of 10, that is a slate of great games. Very diverse slate of very good games that you can play. There's actually ultimately no downside to that. It just feels odd because they own so much and we want everything to be amazing, but it's the reality is just, but then it's like, think about Obsidian. Avowed is a game that actually you and I both really enjoyed to the amounts that we played of it. I was actually impressed by a couple aspects of that game. I actually watched the Outer Worlds 2 showcase early this morning. I was like, no, they're really cracking down on this one. Like, this is, and everything you liked about Outer Worlds is like quadrupled down in this sequel. And then having Grounded 2 also be releasing this year means that like that's maybe one of the best and most consistent outputs from one studio that we've ever seen in the industry.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I just don't know what I want, right? Because part of it is like, does Outer Worlds 2 really ignite a fire in my heart? I think that first game is awesome, but I think the answer for 2 is probably no.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't exactly know what it is about Xbox that I've sort of been cooling on. Because I think that we were talking with Bo and Dan as the show is beginning, that they're actually really proving to be a very disruptive force on PlayStation. Their games are selling a lot on PlayStation. And if they continue to put some variety of lean on the industry to make this play anywhere idea more ubiquitous. Maybe the combination of desperation and extremely deep pockets that the Xbox division has is going to materialize into something that's really significant. But maybe I need to just simply chalk it up to bias. But I look at a lot of this stuff and I'm like, I don't think I'm gonna get that deep into any of this stuff. Maybe it's because I played a little bit of Avowed. I'm like, it doesn't really move me. Play a little bit of Doom. It doesn't really move me.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think I need to ponder my orb about Xbox a little bit more.
Sure. Yeah. Because all I will say is that I think that this was not a great showcase. I think this was easily the worst of the last 4 years that they've had.
I'd agree with that.
Which is unfortunate because, again, it's only a problem for this exact moment. Yeah. It's not like the games coming out this year aren't consistent and seemingly very good, and it doesn't seem like next year will probably be even better. And it's just like, it was just one weird showcase where none of the major hitters showed up. I think opening on an Outer Worlds trailer when we were going to have that as a direct at the very end was a weird choice. I think ending on Black Ops 7, even though it does make sense, was a weird choice. But like I don't really know what I want. I guess I wanted more games to be coming soon, but it's like
we saw many.
Perfect Dark. Yeah, we saw Perfect Dark and State of Decay 3 last year, and so like, are those also coming out next year? On top of what I've heard is that Forza Horizon 6 is first part of the year, and Fable and Gears E-Day and Halo, and like it's like whoa, holy shit!
Yeah, I mean, I think
what the fuck?
Part of it maybe is like needing to refactor our expectations, right? Because I think, but it's like this is not even because Nintendo's the opposite of what I'm about to say, but like there's something very special about a PlayStation Studios game coming out because they release how few of them a year, a couple, right? Like Xbox at the point now where they're releasing games on top of games because they just have so many games.
Yeah.
And like in reality, when I look at Ninja Gaiden 4,
yeah. Oh yeah, that was also here.
Which is probably like it and Luminous are 1A, 1B for my most anticipated non-Nintendo game of the year. Yeah. I think Ninja Gaiden 4 is going to rip. I think it's going to be awesome.
Yeah.
But like that's really got nothing to do with Xbox in a material sense, right? And I think I need to recalibrate my expectations a little bit, and that this is like Xbox at this point is just fucking publishing everything. And maybe some of the stuff has to be taken more in its own terms, opposed to saying, what is this as part of Microsoft's larger strategy for Xbox?
Sure.
Because their strategy for Xbox is just to get shit out everywhere. And like, there's no real curation. And I don't even mean that as an insult, really. It just means that they're going to hoover up everything they can. And I guess that's cool. I don't know. I just think I'm off on this. I'm off-piste on my feelings on Xbox.
What the fuck does that mean?
Off-piste is like a little off-kilter, a little off-tempo. I don't know.
How do you spell piste?
P-I-S-T-E. O-F-F-P-I-S-T-E. 2 words.
Off-piste.
Situated or taking away from prepared ski runs.
Not even close to the way you're using it.
You could use it in this way. Because here we go. In a way that deviates from what is conventional, usual, or expected. I was like so excited about Xbox for so long, and I feel like something has really changed in my bones about them.
I mean, yeah, it's interesting because the time you were excited about them, they weren't doing anything.
No, well, it's interesting, right? Because maybe it's that we're now in practice. I don't care about what they're doing on a personal level.
Sure, yeah, I guess you're maybe more excited for the promise than what actually ended up coming out of it.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I mean, what are some announcements here that were cool? Keeper was cool.
Keeper was excellent. I mean, Double Fine's been quiet for so long. This is coming from director within the studio Lee Petty. You play as a fucking lighthouse, and it's just a little third-person adventure game. That's one of my most anticipated games of the year, easily. I think Double Fine is fascinating. I think it has been. It'll be interesting to see if this marks. It literally does mark their first time that they fully started a game after being owned by Microsoft. My hope is that this is one of 2 or 3 projects that they have going.
It didn't look that big.
No, it didn't look that big. But I hope this is not an entire team is working on this thing and it takes another 4 years to get another game, because I think what's fascinating and what has been fascinating about Double Fine is their willingness to be experimental, and also they used to publish a bunch of smaller games and things, and that's since fallen by the wayside. But I thought it looked excellent from a visual style. It's totally unique from a concept and gameplay perspective, and it's coming out in October. Grounded 2 is not something that I'm particularly excited for, though I did actually like what I played of Grounded. But it is, again, it's something in a different genre. If we're wanting Xbox to diversify and support small team projects, Grounded being a surprisingly big success, giving that a sequel, supporting that with IDOS, leaning into the things that people were wanting to be fixed about that first game, with a sequel that's coming out very soon, it's literally all upside. It's not like Obsidian's being taken away from their RPG projects. It fills out their year in an even more complete way than we were expecting. I thought it was excellent. And then they did a really, really funny Ben Schwartz hosting the Obsidian thing at the end, where he was talking about Grounded and Outer Worlds. And so, I mean, Obsidian is the best part of Microsoft's game studios right now. And this year, they're their crown jewel by a fucking country mile. I also thought that Super Meat Boy 3D was pretty cool.
Yeah, it looks
coming
cool.
early 2026 from another team that's not Team Meat that I don't remember the name of off the top of my head. But that's a cool idea.
Yeah.
Looking forward to that. I'm also excited about Aphelion coming from Don't Nod. That's cool. Their 2026 game. Space action adventure game. I love Don't Nod and the way that they are able to jump between different concepts. I'm very excited about that. There Are No Ghosts at the Grand coming 2026. This is, I have no idea, but the trailer was really striking. And so I'm just instantly very intrigued by it. And that's actually true for a lot of the surprise things here, where I thought almost everything that was a surprise was a cool surprise. And that I'm looking forward to. And again, mostly new IP, mostly from new teams. I thought it looked cool.
What'd you make of Beast of Reincarnation from Game Freak?
that is, I think that's actually the biggest announcement of this show, because it potentially signals, unless this is just a weird one-off thing, which is very possible, that Game Freak is significantly evolving. I mean, this is their first, in the way that you and I had our discussion about what is AAA last year, this is potentially Game Freak's first actual AAA game from a production level and visual quality standpoint. Rewatching the trailer, I thought it looks great in terms of the visuals, and the combat looked good and stuff. It's interesting that it does fall into a similar style and genre as many games that are releasing around it. You know, it's not too far off from Wukong and Wuchang and a fucking Phantom Blade Zero and we saw Code Vein 2 and Moral Shell 2 and like all these games in terms of third person action adventure are quite similar, but I am just fascinated by it. I'm not particularly excited about it on its own merit, but its context is really fascinating, and I can't wait to see what it means for maybe the most important game studio for me personally in the history of the medium. This is something, I mean, it's major.
So there's this article on Game Rant from Liam Ferguson here. It's worth putting probably in the description for people to read. This likely has no bearing on Pokemon.
Okay.
Because there are some senior Pokemon people involved, but the game is being developed primarily by the Project Gear side of Game Freak, which is a very small group within Game Freak that makes the non-Pokemon games.
Yeah.
And oftentimes they're made by people who... there's a core Project Gear team at Game Freak, and then they bring other people from outside of Game Freak in to help make the games. Again, this is a really, really good piece here on Game Rant that I recommend reading. I think that this is going to have no bearing on Pokemon, personally. Just based on the way that...
Here's the thing. I don't think it will for a bit, but... if this game is well received and successful, there's no shot that this then becomes doesn't become a bigger part of Game Freak's identity. Is then we begin a sequel to this or another game in this style. And so if the team bumps up in that way and then has experience working on these other systems, it's gonna bleed over. The amount of production value in this and seeing what the talented side of the studio can do is gonna have some bleed effect on Pokemon. I think it'd be shocking if we still get the exact same kind of Pokemon games 5 years from now if this game is big. But if it's not, I don't think it'll have much effect.
Yeah, I mean, well, the other thing is that this game is probably made in Unreal Engine 5, if I had to guess.
Yeah.
And Unreal Engine 5 is a very flexible, powerful tool set for people who are not super experienced in games. Not to say that people within Game Freak and Project Gear working this aren't experienced developers, but it's to say that you get a lot of intrinsic leg up in terms of the fidelity of your game by working within Unreal 5.
Yeah.
I think it looks really generic, is my feeling. I think that the issue that this game is going to face is how does it stand apart both from the other Souls-likes or action games that are similarly kind of outside of massive IP but are quite popular, you know, like your Wukong last year or presumably your Wuchang this year. We also have Neo 3 coming out, which we saw in the show from PlayStation. I think it's entering into a rather busy space, and it has an aesthetic that looks quite familiar. It's you got a little bit of Ghost of Tsushima in there. You got a little bit of Wukong in there. You got a little bit of that Unreal Engine 5 flavor in there. Yeah. I'm skeptical of the game. I think it could be cool. That's very fair. But I think that if you were to take the Game Freak name off of this one, I don't think it would be moving the needle for most people. But obviously you can't divorce it from that context. Obviously, I just think it's to say that I would be surprised if it ends up being a real seminal release. But obviously it would be cool if it was. It's been a long time since we've had a meaningful non-Pokemon release from Game Freak. I would say maybe there never has been one
ever. Yeah.
So
yeah. And then the final thing is, do we need to really talk more about Black Ops? I mean, it's weird that they didn't show gameplay, and it's weird that we don't have a release window for that game. I mean, I know that those games come out at a very consistent pace, so it's presumably, October or whatever.
Yeah.
But I thought it was a cool trailer. It gives me interest in that campaign coming out later this year. But there definitely were question marks about it that are like, okay, if this is going to be your big closing thing, I feel like maybe you should have had a little more information about it.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I mean, I'm sure the campaign is going to be good, but that's not the point of COD, really, right? So,
yeah,
we didn't even really learn about any of the things that are potentially revelations in the change of pace of play, like we're bringing back wall running and things like that. There's no indication of that at all. We'll see. You would assume that's coming out in November. You assume all this stuff. The other thing is, if it's Black Ops 7, right, it could just be what is effectively a pretty substantial DLC.
Yeah.
On top of what Black Ops 6 already is, who knows?
But no idea.
Yeah, not a great closer, I don't think, but the campaign will certainly be quality, so I'll check it out.
Yeah.
Play a little bit of multiplayer. I really like the Black Ops 6 multiplayer.
Yeah, it's great.
I thought it was a very good package on the whole, so we'll see. I guess, Tucker, just to close it out here, how do you feel about the calendar for, I guess, just how about the rest of this year and into early 2026?
Yeah, it's interesting because a lot of the stuff we saw this summer season actually wasn't dated.
Yeah.
Even with a lot of stuff that's still slated for 25, but doesn't have a release date as of now.
Yeah.
But we pushed further into the year. August really filled out, and September really filled out, and October really filled out.
Totally.
And so I'm looking down the barrel of 3, 4, 5 games each month that I want to play.
Yeah.
So I honestly could not really ask for anything more. I've got games from all sides of the industry that I'm interested in, from all sorts of genres that I'm interested in. It's shaping up to be one of the most interesting years in the industry, I think. So I'm really, really excited.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've got plenty to play. Obviously, I don't think that there's really anything here that has changed my focus on Switch 2 for the rest of the year.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't... I think it'll be interesting to wonder about what the AAA view of 2025 is by the end of the year. But on the smaller side of things, there's a lot that I'm excited about, be it Ninja Gaiden, be it... Not Ninja Gaiden 4, because that's definitely AAA, but Ragebound, Luminous, Hot Shots, Hiragami, a lot of those games look really cool to me. Mina, what we were talking about. A lot of great stuff on the smaller end. Top end, I think it's still largely just Ninja Gaiden 4 for me. But I don't really mind that, because again, throwing all the Nintendo stuff, and whether there's even a Nintendo show for
and maybe Marathon, and maybe Ghost of Yotei.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see when Marathon comes out. Marathon conspicuously not present this year.
Yes.
So we'll see. Yes, Ghost of Yotei.
Highly conspicuous.
Yeah. But Tucker, we did it. We talked through a lot of games, a lot of game showcases.
Yeah.
So people just go be a little happy. Find a little joy in your heart. Find a couple games. You don't need to play. You don't need to play more than two new games a month. That's a lot. You can find that many games to enjoy. I know you can do it. Okay.
I
just relax.